And yeah, we can get into it. So yeah, please introduce yourself and when you started playing StarCraft.
My name is Guillaume Patry. I'm from Canada. I started playing StarCraft when it came out. I think that was March of 1998.
And you instantly felt a connection to StarCraft? What did you like about StarCraft? Why'd you play it?
I was very young back then. I was a high school student, and I had been playing other Blizzard games, Warcraft 1 and 2 mainly, and I was a big fan of those games. So I read somewhere that they were making a new strategy game, real-time strategy game, that was called StarCraft. So I had been waiting for that game for about a year. At that time, I wanted to be an athlete. I was in a ski team, and I went to the school in my town where celebrities and athletes go. So we only went to school in the morning, and in the afternoon we trained for whatever sport or activity that we want to do professionally. Since I was skiing, the ski resorts, they don't open all year round where I'm from. So I would just end up going home right about the time that StarCraft came out. So all my friends are at school, they're doing stuff. I just go home by about 12:30, like by noon. I'm almost home, and then I start playing StarCraft. And that's when I really, really fell in love with the game.
So you probably played the vanilla before Brood War.
I did, yeah. I was playing tournaments already in the Vanilla StarCraft.
Wow, how were the tournaments? How was the competition for Vanilla StarCraft?
Well, they were the best in the world. Nobody in that era could compete today, obviously. But millions of people played, so I guess there was quite a few good players, especially from the United States and Europe at first. Not so much from Korea. Not for the first 9 months.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I hear, most people talk about Brood War and they kind of skip over Vanilla, but from what I've heard is that Vanilla had a lot of balance issues.
Of course. Yes. It was terrible.
Can you elaborate on those issues?
Well, hatcheries would produce enough larvae for you to basically produce from one hatchery, from one base. Reavers would attack instantly when you drop them. Oh. Size storm was instant as well. You can imagine that if there's absolutely no delay for Reavers and size storm, it's really hard to dodge or do anything about those units.
Wow. All I had heard was that, mutas were very good.
Mutas are insane because there's no Corsair, there's no Valkyrie, there's no Medic. So you can't fight properly controlled Mutalisk in StarCraft Vanilla. Thank God, back then, nobody knew how to properly control Mutalisk. So that kind of solves the issue short term, but eventually, yeah, Mutalisks were out of control.
So how was the reception to Brood War then? It seems like it fixed a lot of those problems.
Oh my God, I don't remember the exact timeline, but yeah, it took Blizzard quite a while to fix it. And they somehow managed to fix it in a way that's still valid today. Like 20 years down the road, some genius team of team designers, game designers, they did a really good job, and it lasted until now. Actually, nowadays, when there's a problem with the balance, people blame the maps. They don't blame the actual balance of the game itself, which is absolutely amazing. I've never seen it replicated in any other game.
Okay. It is pretty impressive. So you were a standout player very early on. How did you get to Korea to start participating in those tournaments?
Well, back in those days, in where I'm from, computer games were popular for about 1 to 2 years, and then something else, something better, some better graphics. There was always something else, and then the game would die down. But what happened is that as the game was dying down in North America and Europe, it boomed like nobody had dreamed of in Korea. So there were bigger tournaments, and people actually came to see the event live, which was something new. Mostly people would watch on the internet, or they would just read articles about the games. But everything changed once Koreans got involved in the pro-gaming scene.
Did you have a lot of contact with Korean players on BattleNets or in person?
I had 0 contacts with Korean people, but there was a guy who would write for was it StarCraft.org or strategy.org? I forgot. But his name was John Riley. And he had been studying Korean in Korea. And he knew about the StarCraft culture here. So he invited about two Canadians and two Americans to come here to be pro gamers. And I was one of those.
Oh, okay. Do you remember the other one?
There was a guy called Pillars. There was a guy called Thor. And the last one was Maynard.
Okay, yeah.
Miguel Bombach.
Exactly. Because you were such a good player, did a lot of people already kind of recognize your skill? I guess generally the foreigners as well? Or was this a complete surprise to the Korean tournament producers and players that the foreigners were so good?
No, I was already winning a lot of tournaments, a lot of the big ones, and the Korean gaming community knew of me already, and they expected me to be good. Actually, they kind of had this some kind of halo effect around me. I don't know how to explain it, but they thought I was unbeatable, which I was not. I just had a good track record for the previous 6 months or 12 months before I came to Korea.
Yeah, Crisis actually had quite a lot to say about how good you were. But before we get to that, just can you go over some of the state of Brood War at that time? I recall, Boxer saying that I think he changed from Protoss to Terran, and I don't remember if it was because Protoss was underpowered or he thought that Terran dropship was cooler. But yeah, can you go over some of that balance?
The balance is Protoss was very underpowered in unfavorable maps, which were most of them. So a lot of the time, your first expansion that you can easily get, there's a cliff next to it, so tanks could drop there, and your mineral line could be attacked by mutalisks, and you don't really have vision. At least it's really hard to get vision up there, and it was hard for Protoss on those maps that were poorly balanced, let's say. And the island maps, it was the other way around. Protoss was just so dominant. So it kind of, sometimes it would give us an island map and it was good for us Protoss players. But most of the time, because it's just so one-sided, there was no island map at all. So that's the part about StarCraft that took the longest to resolve, the map issue.
The map issues.
Yeah.
So how did you personally overcome those issues to be so good?
Well, for a while I played random. When I was playing, when I was still in high school, I had enough time to play a lot of StarCraft, and I would, do okay with all the races. And being random gives you this advantage that the other guy doesn't really know what to expect. But once I came to Korea, my intention were not to be a pro gamer for more than 6 months. I thought the game would be unpopular by then, and there would be no more tournaments anyway. So once I came here, I was just having a good time, and somehow I ended up winning a few tournaments. But I didn't do anything to deal with it. I was just having a good time.
Okay.
I wasn't here to complain about anything like that.
Oh yeah, it's a good mindset. But I know that Crisis pointed out to your Reaver drops. Yeah. Now, were Reaver drops a big part of the meta at that time, or was that something that only you were doing?
It was not part of the meta at that time, especially, there was nothing about Reavers that were meta at the time. I think that's the reason why a lot of players didn't really know how to handle Reaver drops. So, I don't know, there's so many games I should not have won that I won because of a Reaver drop. Just one lucky scarab, people are now ready. Nowadays, I still watch all the StarCraft tournaments, people are ready. Like, I would not get away with what I got away with 25 years ago. Yeah,
probably not. Can you talk about, actually, you brought up Maynard. For the StarCraft 2 people, who a lot of people watching this, they know of the commentator, Maynard. But you're talking about the guy who traded the worker transfer.
Yes.
Can you...
Isn't that crazy?
Yes, it is. Can you actually talk about what Maynarding is?
I think when people start playing StarCraft 1 in this case, they all come from a different game where what you learn in that game, you try to transfer it to the new game so that you kind of like know what you're doing when you start. And in all of those games, there was a cap on the number of workers you can get to get resources per mine or per base. But in StarCraft, because it looks similar, people just expected that. It's like the whole gaming community expected there to be a cap on the number of workers you should be making from one base. But Maynard, he realized that, no, actually, you just produce nonstop, and every time you make an expansion, you just transfer maybe half or a large part of your probes there right away. So you have less saturation, and you end up making a lot more resources per minute when you do that. So he's the one who created this very, very simple concept of just never stop making workers, and then you transfer them once you get the chance.
And is that something that is still done in today's meta?
Oh, yeah, much more refined. Everything is much more refined. But if you look at basically any top pro right now, their probe transfer is just perfect. They transfer before their expansion is finished. They know exactly how many to transfer, how many nowadays people will even start producing from their main base to their expansion instead of just transferring everything all at once, because they don't want to lose that precious mining time just to get a few seconds behind what they could potentially have.
So you were a participant of the first named OSL, I believe, that was called OSL, and you won it as well, right? How was that experience going on a television broadcast?
It's actually not as intimidating as a live tournament when you have like 3,000 people watching, because the crowd, surprisingly enough, everybody's been to a sports game, and the crowd is just, there's this roar that you don't hear any words, but it's just, there's energy coming out of the crowd. And we had the same thing in StarCraft in Korea 25 years ago, before YouTube, you know, before Facebook. And that was really exciting. It's a feeling that's hard to describe, and it's hard to replicate outside of that specific environment.
Garimto actually mentioned that it was a rather harsh environment, that studio broadcasts. The lighting was really harsh, and
sometimes it was really hot. We were sweating in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you talk? What was your impression when they held up those suits to you and they were like, you got to wear these uniforms?
Oh, the suits. That's the one thing I hated the most about being a pro gamer, is that they always wanted us to wear flashy suits, like silver suits, golden suits. Those were, they didn't fit. I didn't like that. I was just like embarrassed. I'm not Elvis. Why am I dressed like alien Elvis? I don't know. I didn't like that.
Do you remember when they stopped making you wear those?
That was around the time I retired, actually. It's probably 2003, 2002. I'm not sure, but the new team uniforms were much more well-suited for being a StarCraft pro gamer, I feel.
Yeah. There's some discussion around when this happened. I don't know if you have any insight. Do you recall the first time that you really saw Muta Micro, the way that we know it today, the clump of mutas?
The first time I saw the Mutalist Micro being done properly, I think it was Jaedong in 2004, 2005. Obviously, it had been done before. I just can't remember the first time I saw it. For sure, it didn't take that long for people to figure it out. I mean, back in my day, in the beginning of my career, people were impressed that Lurker would stop firing when you pressed stop with an overlord in your control group. That's I mean, people are still getting better at the game every day. Like nowadays, people can kill a probe, kill an SCV that's running away with a probe. It's something that's so much harder than Mutalist Micro, and a lot of players are really good at it. So the game has evolved. I don't remember the first time I saw a Mutalist properly controlled.
It's still a better timeline than we've gotten so far. So how was that winning that first OSL? Who did you play against? What was the matchup and what happened?
I played against this Korean guy called Reaver. He was a Zerg player, and the maps for that tournament were really favored for Protoss against Zerg, because there was an island map and there was a fair amount of minerals in the main base, which is good for Protoss, for those who don't know. So I was really happy with the maps, and I didn't practice as much as I should for that tournament, but somehow it worked out. And that was a lot of fun.
You said that there was more minerals in the main on some of these maps?
I think I remember it being, instead of being just 8, it was 9 on some of those maps.
Was that a common occurrence, the difference of minerals?
Yeah, that was very common, yeah.
Okay. And then what was your next tournament that you played after that OSL win?
Well, the OSL was the main one always, but they would make special events for us on several other TV stations, like 16 invited pro-gamers to play in the tournament, stuff like that. And because I was known at the time as the world champion, I would always get invited. So I got so many more chances to play than a regular guy who's just good, but he's not already in the system, you know? So my next tournament, King of Kings might have been one of them. I don't know, it's a long time ago. King of Kings, I think I won that one too.
Who were your contemporaries at the time? The other top tier professional players?
There was this guy called Kang Do-kyung. He was amazing. Park Jong-suk, Reach. Yeah, that guy really took us to the next level. And then Kangmin. Kangmin is really the one who sort of made Protoss a viable maps on those maps that we always thought were just nearly impossible for Protoss, especially against Zerg.
Can you talk about Reach and his development of Protoss, why it was so important?
He might disagree with what I'm about to say, but from my interpretation of his style of play, he sort of introduced the concept of trading resources. Like when you're trading armies, back before like Korea and everything, it was just you make one big army and your units are stronger together. We just go in one time, and if that doesn't work out, the game is pretty much over. If that works out, you pretty much won. And that was what everybody was trying to do, just make a big army, and then all the units have good synergy, and you control well, and you can win. But what Reach figured out is that you don't have to try to win the fight, you just have to trade efficiently. So he would have small groups of units, usually with a Templar, 1 Archon, like just really tiny groups of units late in the game. But as long as those units would trade efficiently before dying, he was happy with engaging all those little skirmishes. And that's something that maybe Terrans would do with Vulture or Zerg with Munilisk, but Protoss players were never smart enough until that point to figure out that all you have to do is trade efficiently. If you do that long enough during the game, you'll get ahead and you'll win the game.
I found out who that is, by the way. That was Nalra, is who you were talking about. Kongmin? Okay. Yeah, Nalra. I thought maybe that's who you're talking about because they were so influential to Protoss, but we'll talk about that in a second. So, yeah, he basically learned that you can trade efficiently as Protoss. Now, this must have, I'm not sure, but was this before the Arbiter meta where you would fly in?
It was before.
Yeah. Do you remember when the Arbiter would make an appearance for you, meta?
It was never, in my pro gaming career, there was never an Arbiter meta, never. That happened when I retired, and I remember being invited to some exhibition, and I had to play a game of StarCraft. Even though I'm not a pro, I played, and I was against a Terran player. And I saw all the kids were doing it on TV nowadays. I'm like, why not? And I did Arbiters, and I won, and I was like, wow, this is powerful. This is especially powerful against imperfect players. Like against the good players that are not pros, it's so easy to make mistakes against Arbiters, because if you just don't pay attention for a second, you can really get in a bad situation since my units are invisible and he's not ready for that.
So yeah, on the discussion of Kongmin Nalra, what did he do that made Protoss better?
He figured out that you could make a very fast second expansion with a forge, or even without forge. You just use your gateway and your next building to sort of make a choke that did not exist before with your building. Sometimes he would even make two gateways. There was this game with this map, I think it was called Guillotine, but maybe not. Anyway, there was no ramp, and the choke was really wide. It was a really tough map. And he figured out that it fits exactly two gateways, and so you can put pressure while expanding, while defending really well against Zerglings. It was totally new, and it was a very smart move of him.
Okay. So the forge fast expand.
Forge fast expand. It's you adapt as you go. If your enemy is expanding, you don't necessarily make a forge. You just either you put zealot pressure, but you can always expand really fast. That's no matter what your enemy Zerg is doing, you can just sort of take your expansion without worrying too much about Zerglings.
Yeah, back in your pro gaming days, I mean, I watched some of the VODs. It seems like there was a lot of like one base versus one base.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? I was the one going on internet and doing interviews saying that fast expanding quickly is just, you're asking for trouble because you spend all those resources to put your army smaller, and you have to force a fight. The enemy can force a fight at a timing where you really don't want to take a fight. And I was always thinking, if they're good at putting the pressure early on, you should never expand because you can something's going to happen and you could lose the game right away there. Obviously, that was very, very wrong. But at the time, it worked. People didn't know. We didn't know.
Yeah, same thing happened in StarCraft too, so it's parallels. Slayer's Boxer would have been coming up as well as a celebrity around that time before he retired. Can you talk about, seeing his play for some of the first times?
It was the first time. It was the first time in my life that I saw someone play StarCraft, and there was too few mistakes for me to notice them. His play was like his control was very often perfect. As perfect as you've ever seen it. His win rate was it was incredible. His win rate was really, really high, and he told me once that his phone had 12 numbers on it. All he did was try to be the best StarCraft player possible. He did not drink, he did not go out. He was really focused on being the best StarCraft player in the world, which no doubt, he was the best by a long shot for a long time. Yeah.
So in your pro-gaming days, I believe replays were not available.
There were no replays.
Yeah. Can you talk about the release of the replay patch and how that changed how people learned about each other?
Before replays, knowledge distribution was really, really slow. You really had to see it yourself in a game to truly understand the new concept, the new strategy you were up against. So I think that's one of the reasons why everybody played so imperfect for so long. And there were so many tricks that just took a really long time to go mainstream. Replays really helped speed that up a lot. And then streams, and then, YouTube videos.
Yeah. Eventually, yes. So you played against Boxer.
Yeah.
Yeah, a few times. What was the experience of playing versus him?
Very often against Terran I would go Reavers, and if I had a really good start and my Reavers did really well, I would know I won this game. This game's over. He lost too many SCVs, he lost tanks. I'm in such a good spot. But against him, somehow, it was not over. And actually, I ended up losing most of those games against him. Most of the televised and the non-televised game. He would just beat me. His win rate was over 80% against me. It was, just being like 55% would have been like, wow, this guy is really good. Because in StarCraft, that's how it works. You don't win 100% of your games in StarCraft, but this guy just won so much more than anybody else had ever against me.
The celebrity status of Boxer, you know, he was seen as one of the first celebrities, but in general, we started to see a lot of similarities between like K-pop stars and StarCraft stars. Was that an intentional move on the side of the tournament organizers? Was that up to the players?
I think nobody's that smart. Nobody could make him what he became. It's just sort of, it's just how he emerged as a celebrity. It's just being good-looking, young, hardworking. He has absolutely no issues that I've heard of with any other player, anyone else. And he just won so many tournaments, dominated when the ratings were still really good. So people would talk about, like in the street, people would talk about the StarCraft tournaments back then still. So people were thinking, this guy is the biggest celebrity StarCraft has ever produced. And he's probably the last one because StarCraft was already a few years old back then. So, but once again, everybody was wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So you were part of a couple of the foreigners who went over to Korea, and obviously you stood out a little bit above them. But was this idea that foreigners could compete in StarCraft in the beginning? Did you expect such a Korean-dominated scene? In the beginning, absolutely not. All I knew about StarCraft were the Samsung, LG, and those brands, the Hyundai. Even if I played StarCraft Online, I saw those broken characters that I couldn't really read. But who are those people? Oh, they're Koreans. Oh, so like, I had no idea they would become so good. But once I came here, I felt like the reason why they're so good. First of all, about 20% of the country seems to be playing StarCraft every other day. That's 10 million people playing StarCraft. And the kids that want to be in tournaments, they grind. They really, really try hard to be good. Every other, North American or European pro gamer that I met, once they win a tournament or they reach a goal that they set from themselves, they would, start, doing something else, just drinking or doing sports or something else. But Koreans, once they reach the top, they feel an obligation to their to their fans to be the best that they can possibly be for as long as possible. So the better they got and the more tournaments they won, the harder they practiced. So there was a time where you kind of just accepted that Korea was going to dominate Brood War. Yeah. Very few people were still playing except the hardcore StarCraft community. Like around the world, most of the active players, like the millions of players of StarCraft, were in Korea. So I fully expected Koreans to be the best. Was there ever a moment where you felt truly overwhelmed by how popular Brood War had gotten?
Yeah. There was this KBK tournament. It was not so far from here, actually. And they had rented some kind of event hall. It was big. It was really big. And as soon as they opened the door, there were thousands of people waiting to just rush in and get a good seat. And there was security, there was energy in that crowd, a lot of energy. I never expected anything like that, ever, for a video game. Back in the day, that was crazy.
So did you end up following Brood War after you retired?
Yes, I never stopped.
Never stopped, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
This might have happened before you retired, but do you recall the Boxer versus Yellow rivalry?
Yes.
Yes. Can you explain why that was such a celebrated rivalry? It's still, they still get invited to show matches to this day.
Yeah. Well, Boxer was the #1 player in the world in the history of the game, and everybody loved watching him play and do his micro. It was so good at one point that he could do anything. He could do any strategy on many different maps, and he would just win because his micro was so good. And Yellow was the best Zerg at the time, but he always somehow ended up being second. And even though he was very popular, a lot of the people watching, they were like, oh, he's second again. And it kind of became a meme before there were memes. And people just call him like number second or something like that in Korean. And so a lot of people in this country like to root for the underdog. And people were a big fan of Boxer, but they were still rooting for Yellow because he's always getting second. So all of those games that he played, I think he played well, but he was really against, by far, the best player StarCraft had ever known until Flash. So that's what happened. He didn't win many of those tournaments, but he got so many seconds that I think it was a good rivalry. Number 1 against number 2. It makes sense. And it's also a matchup that people love to watch. Like, I don't play Terran very much or Zerg, but just watching Terran against Zerg, there's just so much action. There's so much going on. A lot of units are always fighting. So it's always fun to watch a good TVZ.
Yeah. To this day, 24 years, and it's the number 1, I think, rated matchup.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you were actually around when KeSPA formed. Can you talk about that? Why it formed? What was impactful?
Oh. I don't know much about KeSPA. I know they were always reaching for the team or the big sponsors to get some funding for whatever they were doing. But I never felt like they organized a tournament that was worth playing. I never felt like they provided much service. I felt like I didn't think much. I mean, not in a good way or in a bad way. I was wondering, who are these guys and why are they here? Do we need these guys here? I guess, I don't know.
You were detached from the process.
I did put some thoughts to KeSPA back then. I used to sometimes think they're some kind of parasite. We'd be better off without them. And sometimes I just understood that I didn't know enough about what was going on to know if they're a good organization or a bad organization. So I'm neutral. I don't know if they helped or didn't help. I don't care about KeSPA. I don't think nobody cares. Nobody cared about them back then, and even today I don't think anybody cares really. It's just people creating jobs for themselves.
Well, as you may know, that KeSPA had a big dispute with Blizzard many years later. But the argument was basically Blizzard, was like, well, we made the game, so we should have some ownership of your television broadcasts and the work that you did. And KeSPA's thought was they literally said you were the soccer ball and we were FIFA to Blizzard. So they ended up being quite controversial.
Yeah, they were like rude as hell. They would like, there would be a tournament in the morning at like, early for pro gamers, regular time for normal people. And then like all the gamers were waiting to play this qualifier for a tournament. And some KeSPA officials would just like start yelling out of their mind, like we're in the army, like something I've never seen in my life. Like everybody, shut up. You need to hear this right now. And then everybody who doesn't like shut up at this instant is disqualified from playing in the tournament, right? It was like what the hell is going on? Just like, can't you be like, no chill at all, no chill. And I thought I felt like I was in a movie. There's a movie, I forgot, I think Donald Trump posted the meme of the movie recently. Anyway, it's a army guy just yelling at a new recruit, and he just yells in his face nonstop, like that's what it felt like, and I thought that was kind of funny. So I was the only one laughing, but the Koreans didn't find that funny. They got in line. And then from that day on, I just didn't think much of KeSPA. It's like, whatever you guys do, just don't bother me and we'll be fine.
Well, we also had the development of Pro League and the inclusion of these really big sponsors. So, was there any type of feeling like, okay, wow, this esport has really made it when teams like Samsung and KT Rolster were created?
Those teams did invest quite a bit of money, but in the early days, there were so many scandals. And then the scandals were always about money. This guy's manager just took all the money that he made that year and just like went to jail, or like he just spent it, or he stole it. There's so many scandals that the big corporations, from my understanding, from what I've been told in those days, they didn't want to invest in this new industry because it was too corrupt, and it was too difficult for them to sort of get a good marketing value out of being involved. So it took a few years. Samsung was the one team that put their toe in the water, but they didn't really do much more than that because of those fears. It took quite a long time for the pro gamers to find proper management, professional, honest people that were there to support them and help them, more than just sort of just drain or suck the monetary the money out of those little kids.
So that's fascinating. The match fixing scandal happens in 2009, 2010. So would you say that there is already some amount of hesitation with the pro gaming scene, and then the match fixing scandal kind of lit that bubble to the surface?
I'm talking about 2000, 2001.
Right, yeah.
Right. And after that, if we talk about like 2003, 4, everything was okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. The match fixing scandal, I don't know that much about it, other than I'm good friends with the people who are involved. And whatever you read on the news, it's either just the tip of the iceberg, or the whole thing is a little bit overblown. What happened here, those pro gamers were making really good money. But even back in those days, they would not throw away games in the finals for the kind of money that was reported. So either it's way bigger, like I'm talking about 10 to 1,000 times bigger in terms of the amount that was reported, or it's just, I don't know. I mean, it cannot be that small. Nothing makes sense. But I don't know the answer to all of this. But it's a very sad day for StarCraft when the players are throwing games to make extra cash on the side. But that amount had to be much bigger than it was reported.
You can talk about some of the big names that ended up arriving in Brood War. You can talk a little bit about like July's impact to Brood.
July, wow. We're still going back at least 23, 4 years.
Yes.
Aren't we?
19 years, I think.
Yeah, I like July. He was so solid, and there's another meme that started around that time. It's like we would go to a qualifier and look at the new recruits, the new like good players that we never seen in real life, and we, without knowing who they are, we just try to guess their race. And like, this guy looks like a Zerg, this guy looks like a Terran, and surprisingly, we were right a lot of the time. At least I don't have any data to prove it to you, but like the Zerg players look like Zergs, Protoss players look like Protoss. It's almost like if you start playing a race enough, your face sort of matches your race, or because there's something going on. I don't know what it is, but that was funny. But Zerg was just risk adverse, but so solid. Everything was so solid. The way he managed his economy was different from most players. It's like he tried, like he was very aggressive the whole game, but he was also somehow managing during all that aggression to take the whole map and build a really strong economy. But let's say that he was a solid player that was not greedy at all. And you never got a free win. You never like caught him off guard. He was always ready for what I had to. He was already for everything I had prepared. Yeah.
And do you have any thoughts on Nada?
Nada, I met him before he was a pro gamer, before anybody knew his name. I met him at a small tournament in the countryside. There was just one internet cafe that had the StarCraft tournament, and I was invited there to play against the winner. Nada was the winner, and he was really, really young. Like, he was just a little boy back then. He was short. Like, he's tall now. He looks like an old man now. He's an old man. But he was so small and so short. And this guy would just play Terran like I've never seen anybody play Terran like that. His control, his late game unit control was just amazing. And I told my manager, this guy, he's what, like 13, 14 years old? You need to get him on our team and just try to make him a pro gamer. I've never seen anything like this. And my manager, he was one of those corrupt, like still money. He was not one of the good guys. His name is Daniel Lee. He still owes money to the players from like 25 years ago. It's just what a scumbag. But anyway, this guy just somehow he didn't, I don't know, he was just always like, he's always somewhere else in his head, and he didn't do it. But then like a year or two later, like he was just, not that I was upcoming star, just winning every tournament, and everybody was amazed every time you watch him play. Every time there was just something amazing about his play, something different. He was on another level.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And then the big four, you can talk about Jaedong.
Jaedong? I love Jaedong. He's the nicest guy. We never played. He's too many years after me for us to have ever played, unfortunately. But 7 years ago, I moved to a new apartment complex, and I was going to buy some milk, and guess who I see in the street? It's Jaedong. I'm like, oh my God, Jaedong. He's like, oh, you're Guillaume. I'm like, yeah, you're Jaedong. And then we shook hands, and we sort of, we were neighbors for a long time. So that's how I met him. But yeah, you want me to talk about him as a StarCraft player, probably. Yeah, he was the uncontested best Zerg player in the world for many, many years. And I think, surprisingly, he's in late 30s right now. He's not a young man anymore, but he's still very, very good. Mm-hmm. And every time I see him in the tournaments, I root for him, and then I text him afterwards, like, oh, you were doing so great. Anyway, I enjoy the game and everything. So that's the kind of relationship we have. But yeah, the greatest Zerg from that era. From when he was active as a pro gamer, he was the best Zerg that had ever played.
You talk about his rivalry with Flash.
There's no rivalry with Flash. Flash is like the AGI of StarCraft. Everything Flash does. Okay, let me put it this way. Flash is so good at the game that when Flash is actively playing, everybody's skill increases because everybody learns from each other, and Flash is just so much better than anybody else. Like, I know I've been saying like, July was really good, Imran was very good, and then like we're going up like this, right, stairs, and then most of those gamers that I'm telling you about, their win rate was, the really good one at their prime was maybe 60%, and the ones that have been really good for a long time, their win rate maybe is like 57, 58. Flash's win rate was 86%. He won everything. Nobody was close to him. So in my mind, there was no rivalry. Flash is just, he's not on the same level as, he's not human. I mean, he's not like everybody else. Maybe there's been 20 million people that play StarCraft over the 25 years period. There was one Flash, and then there was everybody else. There's no comparison. You cannot compare. You can't compare the results. When you watch him play Control, you cannot compare anything. There's no weakness in any of his game. He doesn't take chances. So he achieved that win rate without being greedy like ever. So it's very something different that, no rivalry between Jaedong and Flash. Flash was here, and then Jaedong just happened to be the second best player at the time. That's what happened. Okay. By the way, Jaedong, I miss you. I'm not saying that you were not good. You're really good. Yeah.
How about Stork's contribution?
Stork? Stork. I like Stork. Unfortunately, I didn't see that many of his games. I saw him in the finals. I was there live. I don't know. I know he's making a comeback right now. He's really good right now. He hasn't been good for a long time, but I can't tell you anything about more than that. It's not a player I followed very much. I'm very inspired by his weight transformation. That was amazing. Nobody, back in those days, the gamers, they were like the golfers, you know, the John Daly's. Like, we don't care about our body. We play StarCraft, we focus on the game. But nowadays, the golfers, they all work out and they all look like they have not all of them, but they look like they have quite a bit of muscle. Back in those days, StarCraft players, they were just, you know, we eat delivery food and we play StarCraft. That's what we did. But nowadays, people start focusing on nutrition and health and sleep and mental focus. Like they have people, you know. We didn't have people, and they have people taking care of them. I think that's why they're so much better now.
How about Bisu?
Bisu, yeah. Bisu did a lot. He really did a lot because one of the reasons Protoss struggles against Zerg is because you're lacking information, and the Zerg either doesn't need much information or they get it through standard scouting and they're overlords. So we always felt behind. And in Protoss, if you don't know what the Zerg is playing and you're not ready, you could just lose a game like this without even really having played, because they made mules too fast or lurkers too fast. Or they started expanding when you were not sure exactly how many units were hiding outside your door, so you couldn't go out. But Bisu found a way around that. It's a fast Corsair, but not just a fast Corsair, it's a fast expansion and then fast Corsair, which is like the standard build right now. Before that, try to play against Zerg on one of those like really balanced modern map without using Corsair early to know what the Zerg is doing, or without fast expanding. You can't. You're not going to win if you don't do what Bisu created, that build order that seems so prevalent today. Bisu created that.
So StarCraft 2 was announced in 2007. What were your thoughts seeing a sequel finally?
I was so excited. I thought I was going to, try to, play tournaments and ladder and everything. So I did. I went to play a tournament. And I didn't qualify. I almost qualified, but I didn't qualify. But yeah, I was really excited. StarCraft 2.
What were your thoughts on the mechanical changes, StarCraft 2, the dumbing down?
If you asked me that question 20 years ago, I would have hated it. I would have hated everything about it. I actually, without it being my intent, I was talking to Rob Pardo, the game designer of StarCraft. And he was making Warcraft 3 back then. It was a 3D game, the first real-time strategy 3D game. And I was explaining to him that I feel like StarCraft is so beautiful because it's in, I was a kid saying whatever, but I was saying, like, you cannot balance a game on a 3D map. How does that work? Like, so the units that are here, like, I don't know. He just sort of brushed me away. It's like, you don't know what you're talking about. Of course, he was right. StarCraft, I think it was okay because I'm so much slower now. So all of those changes that they made to make life easier for beginners, I would be benefiting from those changes. But as a purist, back in the day, I would totally have hated the fact that they made it so simple to manage your workers or the rally points and everything. Yeah.
The last Brood War OSL was in 2012, Fantasy versus Zhongbi. Did you have any feelings watching that and seeing that kind of era come to an end?
I don't remember that game. I don't remember that tournament. Fantasy versus who?
Zhongbi.
Zhongbi. I don't know if I watched it.
Well, did you know that was the last OSL?
No, I didn't know.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't matter for me.
Oh.
OSL is just a brand. I have no affiliation with them, even though I'm very thankful for what they did for the pro gaming scene, something that Blizzard probably should have done in hindsight. But, if there's a big tournament and the editing is right, the commentating is right. It doesn't matter what brand the tournament is. I watch all of the good ones. If they have all the good players, of course I watch it. But I watch all the tournaments, and I don't even know what the name of the tournament is. You know, I don't care. I just want to watch good players play StarCraft.
So maybe we can kind of touch on well, what is now modern Brood War, I suppose you could say, which is still massively popular in Korea. Were you surprised, that this could once again come to be? Because they moved over to StarCraft 2 for a while, right? Everyone had to give that a go as Blizzard forced the issue. But as soon as they kind of lost interest or couldn't perform or whatever it was, they all moved back to Brood War. So how was watching that kind of come back up?
Yeah, totally unbelievable. I'm the guy who thought in 2000 StarCraft and Brood War would be a dead game within 12 months or 24 months. And then Boxer became popular. I said, okay, he's the last star. We're gonna move to some other game, and then it's over. And then so many years later, StarCraft 2 comes out, and I'm like, okay, now that's it. Look at this game. The graphics, the resolution, everything is just so much more polished. It's a better game. It came out, I don't remember how many years after StarCraft came out, but 12 years, yeah. So a lot happened in 12 years in the technology space. StarCraft is gonna die. And then it didn't. And then Remastered came out. And then there's a little bit of a wave in the popularity, but I feel like it's never died, and it's never even came close to dying, which is just unbelievable. And nowadays, I feel like I've been wrong for so long, and there's something called the Lindy effect. It's like for instance, the longer a restaurant's been running, the more likely it is that it's going to run for a long time in the future. So that's the Lindy effect. So StarCraft has been popular for 25 years. That means that it's much more likely that it's going to be popular for 25 more years in the future. So now, I believe that StarCraft has a chance of being really popular, well, to keep the same level of popularity as it has now for many decades in the future. So I've been wrong every time until now, but now I'm right. Now I'm right.
A couple last questions here. What do you think the legacy of StarCraft is?
All those pro gamers nowadays that, they started playing a game that came out a few years ago, and then they made their stream. They got 10,000 viewers. They have their YouTube channels. They're like, everything is just perfect. Like they were born at the right time. But the people that played StarCraft 25 years ago, we were the first generation of pro gamers, and we had to filter out all the scandals, the corruption, and all those technology platforms that allow gamers to actually, have an audience. Twitch, YouTube, these things didn't exist. So the StarCraft pro gaming scene is the people who were involved with StarCraft in the beginning are the people who made it possible for the gaming industry, the esports industry, to become global and recognized as an institution.
And finally, what does StarCraft mean to you?
I'm sure Nick has a super smart answer to tell you right here. StarCraft, it's the game who made me who I am. Without StarCraft, I might be a washed-up wannabe Olympian that never made it anywhere. I love that game. I love playing it. My first years in Korea were just like a vacation. It was awesome. It was good for my self-esteem. It really totally changed the course of my life. And I'm very thankful for some genius in San Francisco or California somewhere to have created that game that is still popular today. I get a lot of entertainment these days. You haven't talked about my favorite player, which I'm quite a bit surprised because he's so good. But yeah, StarCraft is a big part of my life. Big part. I just had a little girl. She's 1 year old, and one day, hopefully there will still be live events running in Jamshir over here. And I'll go with my daughter and she'll be like, Daddy, what's that? And it's like, oh, that's what I used to do. I used to play games. I used to be on stage, just like these guys. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's going to be quite a moment to remember.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Who is your favorite player?
Snow.
Ah, Snow, because he's so good right now. Yeah.
He's so good, but he's so funny. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I speak Korean.
Mm-hmm.
I speak Korean, and just watching him play and talk, it's like a TV show. It makes me wonder, 25 years ago, if they recreated the streaming experience on a broadcast station, just a pro gamer just playing games and talking for 1 hour on TV, I think it would have been really, really popular if you find Snow, for instance, someone who can talk and be funny and play so well. I mean, we talked about Reaver drop, Reaver micro. Snow is on a different level that anybody else has ever been. And that's 25 years after the game came out. He figured something else that nobody figured out, and now he's on a different level. It's amazing.
Yeah, Tasteless talked about him and his development of the Reaver micro.
It's insane. I was with him, I was drinking with him about 2 weeks ago. The first time I ever met him, by the way. And I was like, I'm a big fan. He's like, oh. He's like, you're so much older than you. I don't know what he said, but it was weird. It was not like very casual, like, hey man, how are you doing? Like, it was a very Korean, interaction. And I was telling him about the way you control your Reavers and everything. It's just, I never thought of that, and it's amazing. I watched all of your YouTube videos, and he was like, no.